We got shirts on sale. Express your love for the evolutions and the new channel rebrand with an evolution t-shirt and hoodie. On sale now. Also, if you like anime, go check out our anime channel MysticSage for awesome anime content. And be sure to follow me on social media so you can stay caught up with the channels and me. Links will be in the description below. So today, I'm going to be doing something very different with the Best Team series. I'm going to be going back in time to when things were simultaneously a lot simpler, but also very complicated. 1998. Pokemon Red and Blue are just coming out in America for the Game Boy, and of course, they became incredibly successful. Why none of us would be here enjoying this video if not for these original releases and the boom they caused for the franchise overseas. The games have changed massively since back then, and I decided that for this Best Team, I would build something that could be used competitively by people way back then, and even now if you've got the games to play for yourselves. I'll admit that there isn't as much to talk about when it comes to stats and things like that when discussing the first generation, but really, that's all good. I've got a few other things that can be discussed about these Pokemon and the way they're built that will help fill the void left behind by the stats system and many other things being so different. As I've spoken about in previous videos, the first generation of Pokemon is an incredibly successful yet flawed entry in the series. Everything has a beginning, and to say the first releases in this series are perfect is far from the truth. I'll name off a few, starting with the fact that if you use items or moves that are supposed to up your critical hit rate, like the Dire Hit or Focus Energy, you're actually making it incredibly harder for you to hit any crits at all. It's possible that a Pokemon in the recharging turn after using Hyper Beam will end up being put to sleep instantly by a Pokemon using Hypnosis, regardless of any status element they may already be suffering from. There's also one where if you are in the attacking turn of a move like Fly and end up fully paralyzed or hurt yourself in confusion, that almost all moves used against your Pokemon will fail until you successfully use Fly again. There are literally dozens of different glitches that go beyond just these few, but they really change how battles can go in the first generation and really make it difficult to try and put together a true competitive team. Thankfully, as was with many events back then that were PvP battles, would usually be conducted in Pokemon Stadium for the Nintendo 64, which fixed a ton of these glitches. However, the team I'm building today is treated as if you're playing with a link cable in the original cartridge versions of Red and Blue. The team I've put together are a group of Pokemon that in many ways are some of the best in the first generation. Now before we start getting into them and breaking them down, there are some details about Gen 1 that I want to cover first. For instance, with these Pokemon, you're about to see quite a few moves get repeated. There are just not a lot of moves that were introduced in the first generation, so the ones that are simply the best are included multiple times across the Pokemon featured. Another important thing to mention is that there is of course no physical special split here, so I needed to focus more on what was stab and still powerful. The idea of having coverage and being able to just build incredibly complex sets is just something that needs to be forgotten when making these teams. I mean, the biggest thing here is the fact that there are no IVs at all, and you can essentially have 252 EVs and everything. It sort of eliminates a lot of the guesswork of trying to figure out what a Pokemon has invested into them, since in a competitive battle, you'll probably be able to see every stat has 252 EVs thrown in. Well, with that introduction out of the way, I think it's time we get this team started. We're going to open things up with Mewtwo, which is a pretty obvious choice when you're putting together a best team for the first releases of the franchise. Mewtwo is probably the best Pokemon in the games without a doubt, and sort of serves as a final boss in a way in Red, Blue, and Yellow. I decided to use it over Mew since it's a lot easier to get your hands on. There are of course ways to capture Mew in Red and Blue by performing somewhat convoluted glitches, but even then, Mewtwo is the better Pokemon in my opinion. Since there aren't any held items in Gen 1, it's not holding anything and it has no ability either. So really the only thing to talk about in regards to it are its stats. As we've come to see in modern day Pokemon games, Mewtwo has got some wild stats, but they're actually the same as its Gen 1 version. In Pokemon Sword and Shield, Mewtwo has got 154 in special attack, 130 in speed, and 106 base HP. These are all the same as its stats in Red, Blue, and Yellow, with of course special defense being something that we have now, but we didn't have then. We're going to naturally put 252 EVs in the special, speed, defense, and HP. But there is something else I didn't mention earlier that I figured would be nice to talk about now. While the first generation doesn't have IVs, they do have something called DVs, which stands for determinate values. These DVs go into all stats in a similar way as IVs do, but you can only have a maximum of 15. There's a really complex algorithm that goes into determining the HP DVs for a Pokemon, so I won't really get into it right now. But just know, that there actually is something rather close to IVs that are in Gen 1, and you should know for the rest of this video that all Pokemon should have 15 in each of their stats. Mewtwo is going to have 415 HP, 278 defense, 406 special, and 358 speed, definitely lending credence to the idea that it is indeed the strongest Pokemon in the games, especially when you take into account that the faster a Pokemon is, the more of a chance it has at a critical hit. So the moveset Mewtwo has is Psychic, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, and Substitute. Like I mentioned before, there are really not that many attacks in the first generation, and I can assure you this isn't the only time you'll see a couple of these moves on this team. These 3 attacking moves are all on the special side, so we'll definitely be putting that staggering 406 special stat to good use. Psychic is a move with a base power of 90, and since Stab is in these games and has remained the same ever since, we know that it'll get a nice boost in power up to 135. Psychic also has a 33% chance of lowering the opponent's special stat by a stage, which changes of course in the second generation, onwards to just a 10% chance to lower the opponent's special defense. The next move is Ice Beam, which in the first generation has 95 base power, though in later games it's lowered down to 90. It's a nice general coverage move against some of the more powerful attackers of the game, like Rydon and Dragonite, and has a 10% chance to freeze. Thunderbolt is another move that just has general coverage properties, and is in the same boat as Ice Beam of being a move that has 95 base power, but gets lowered to 90 in future games, along with a 10% chance to paralyze the opponent. Finally, there is Substitute, which essentially will make Mewtwo almost invincible. You'll lose a fourth of Mewtwo's HP, but with its speed and defenses, almost nothing will be able to break the sub in one turn. Mewtwo is no doubt the strongest Pokemon in the game, and its spot on this team was guaranteed no matter what. The next Pokemon featured on this team is Gengar, and it's a rather curious one. Gengar is a very good Pokemon now, and it was a really good one back then. As a matter of fact, its line was the only Ghost-type Pokemon even in the first generation, and in Gen 2, they only added Misdreavus, which kept Gengar as still being the king of ghosts. The real disappointment with it is that in the first generation, the Ghost typing is not super effective against Psychic types, meaning that the only type advantage Ghosts actually had were against themselves. And at that point, there was only one Ghost-type move that actually did any damage, and that is Lick. I had to get a bit creative with Gengar, as I really wanted it on this team thanks to its great speed and special attack, and I think I came up with something pretty decent. We're giving Gengar 252 EVs into everything but attack, since it's a bit unnecessary, and that will give us 323 HP, 358 special, and 318 in the important stats. The moveset being used for Gengar is Confuse Ray, Dream Eater, Hypnosis, and Seismic Toss. Confuse Ray was a really obvious move to put on Gengar when building this set, as I wanted something Ghost related on here, and it was the only real option. It has 100% accuracy in the first generation, which makes it an incredible option for disrupting an opponent in battle. Next there is Hypnosis and Dream Eater, 2 moves that go hand in hand. While Hypnosis doesn't get the same treatment as Confuse Ray with 100% accuracy, it was still a good move to include here to work in tandem with Dream Eater. Dream Eater is a move with 100 base power that will give Gengar back 50% of the damage dealt, and that's something that could turn out to be majorly helpful in battle. Since Gengar has such good speed and high special, you could pull off some critical hits that could easily one-hit a Pokemon while restoring Gengar's health. Finally, we have Seismic Toss, which works by dealing damage equal to the level of Gengar. So if you're using a level 100 Gengar, you'll do 100 HP worth of damage to the opponent. It's a great option for finishing a Pokemon off that might not be asleep, and it was sort of the perfect fit for wrapping up this moveset. It's a shame that there just aren't any good Ghost-type moves for attacking, or any Poison-type moves that Gengar can actually learn. But considering the set it did end up with, it's still a very good Pokemon. We follow up on Gengar with one of the strongest attackers in the game, Rydon. Rydon is a really good Pokemon in future games, and its eventual evolution into Rhyperior makes it even stronger. However, in the first generation, it serves as a powerful physical attacker and wall that only truly fears water and grass. It's got 130 base attack and 120 base defense, along with 105 base HP. It is by far one of the slowest Pokemon I have on this team though, with base 40 speed. With 252 EVs thrown into everything, its speed comes out to 178, which is still pretty awful, but its attack is a fantastic 358, and that defense is also great at 338. Rydon is definitely one of those Pokemon that is here to serve as a major physical attacker that can come in when your opponent has shown it leads more on a physical side of battle. Earthquake, Rock Slide, Body Slam, and Surf are the 4 moves that Rydon is rocking out with here, and that pun is intended as always. Earthquake is arguably the best move in the first generation, and Rydon having it makes it an even scarier threat, as if stab it'll shoot up to 150 base power. There aren't many Pokemon with the defense needed to survive even one Earthquake from a Rydon, let alone 2. Rock Slide is another great move that sees a stab boost to 112 base power, but it lacks a 30% chance to flinch the opponent that comes with it in future generations. That's definitely a very good addition that they made to this move, without a doubt. Body Slam is next, and I chose to use this just for the sake of giving Rydon something that can cause a status element, in this case paralysis. It's got 80 base power, and the odds of paralyzing are at 30%, so it's definitely got a good chance of working out for you. Finally, there is Surf, which might seem a little odd to see on this Pokemon since it's not exactly known for having a good special stat. However, there is a chance you could come across another Rydon in battle that could really threaten a potential sweep from your own, so you could shock an opponent with a Surf that would most certainly one-hit KO a Rydon. Snorlax is the next Pokemon on this team, and you guys know just how much I love including Snorlax where I can. It's here for a pretty good reason, being the most bulky Pokemon in Generation 1 behind Chansey, and also because of its powerful move pool. It gets 252 EVs across the board, and that helps give it 523 HP, 318 attack, and an even slower speed step than Rydon at 158. However, Snorlax has all the bulk needed to back up its great attack stat. The moves on Snorlax are as follows: Hyper Beam, Body Slam, Earthquake, and Psychic. This is the first instance of Hyper Beam on this team, which was an incredibly broken move back in Generation 1. The programming of Hyper Beam is very weird in Gen 1, and essentially Snorlax will not need a recharge for a multitude of different reasons. If you break a Pokemon substitute using Hyper Beam, you won't need to recharge. And more importantly, if you manage to knock a Pokemon out with Hyper Beam, the need to recharge is also gone. The move is normally 150 base power, but of course sees a boost from Stab up to 225 base power, making it incredibly powerful and enabling Snorlax to definitely one-hit KO several Pokemon in battle. As long as you can keep knocking out Pokemon with Hyper Beam, you may never have to deal with recharging. Body Slam, though, is a part of this set that helps give you another stab option that is still very good, and doesn't come with the risk of having to give up a turn of recharging. It goes up to 120 base power, and of course has a 30% chance to paralyze the opponent that we talked about earlier. Finally, there is the 100 base power Earthquake, which is for the Pokemon who aren't affected by normal type moves, or just happen to resist them, and Psychic, which is for coverage against Snorlax's only weakness, the fighting types. Following Snorlax is another one of my favorite Pokemon from the first generation, Lapras. Lapras is an absolute boss in these games, and its great water/ice typing helps it turn into one of the best competitive Pokemon in the generation. Its stats of 252 EVs thrown in give it a nice and bulky 463 HP, a strong 288 special, and 258 defense. The moveset Lapras is using is headlined by Hydro Pump and Ice Beam, and complemented by Thunderbolt and Confuse Ray. Hydro Pump is a base 120 power move that is boosted up to 180 by Stab, and while it has only 80% accuracy, it's still a very necessary move on Lapras. I could have gone with Surf here, but I wanted to definitely go with the power factor here and give Lapras something it could certainly one-shot with. Ice Beam is next, and that gets a nice bump from 95 base power to 142 base power, while of course maintaining its 10% chance to freeze the opponent. Thunderbolt serves as some nice coverage for helping plow through other water types with its 95 base power and a 10% chance to paralyze. Finally, Confuse Ray is here, just to give Lapras a little bit of extra leverage against some Pokemon that may threaten it, or just give it a hard time in battle, like other ice types and stuff that it is weak to. We have reached the final Pokemon on this set, the incomparable Dragonite. Dragonite is an absolute legend, and it's got the second highest base stat totals in the game, behind Mewtwo and tied with Mew. Dragonite is infamous for how annoying it could possibly be when using the move Wrap, and since we've got the option to, I'll definitely be using it. The 252 EVs and all of its stats leave it with two very important ones: 366 attack and 258 speed. This moveset has been dubbed the most annoying one in the history of Pokemon, and that is without a doubt incredibly true. Agility, when used, will double Dragonite's speed from 258 to 516, making it faster than all other Pokemon who don't have anything set up themselves. Now, you're enabled to use Wrap, and with that, completely destroy the opponent. Wrap will constantly keep a Pokemon from being able to do anything each turn for up to 5 turns, and for all Pokemon aside from Gengar, it'll also do damage each turn. This enables Dragonite to deliver massive amounts of damage with its 2 other moves, starting with Hyper Beam. As we discussed before, Hyper Beam is 150 base power, and if you manage to knock a Pokemon out with it, you'll skip over the recharge turn, basically freeing up an extra turn. However, with the way Wrap works, you should be alright when having to deal with the recharge, even if you don't knock the opponent out that turn. Blizzard is almost entirely here, just so you can take out a Gengar if you're going up against one, since it won't take any damage from Wrap, and of course isn't affected by Hyper Beam. This Dragonite is possibly going to be your best chance at a sweep against your opponent, and the fact that Body Slime is represented well on this team gives you a great shot at paralyzing many Pokemon on the other team, which means you may not even need to spend a turn using Agility at all. Well, that's the team I decided to put together this time around. This one was a real challenge to put together, but it also felt a bit rewarding in the end. This is something that's a pretty big departure from the theme-based teams I usually do, and getting to revisit the old mechanics and buggy nature of Red and Blue was actually fun when it came to putting this one together. I could totally see someone taking a team like this to their local Toys R Us back in the late 90s and absolutely dominating a tournament of some kind. I hope you guys enjoyed this one as much as I did, and I want to know what you all think in the comments below. Did this team work for you on Showdown, or possibly even in your own copy of Pokemon Red, Blue, or Yellow? Let me know if you'd have changed anything or used some different Pokemon, and I'll be sure to check it out. If you enjoyed the video, why not leave a like and subscribe to my channel with notifications on, that way you never miss an upload. If you want to support me further, consider following my Twitch where I stream all sorts of games from Pokemon to Fire Emblem to Zelda and much more. I also have an anime channel called MysticSage where I do anime reviews, rankings, and countdowns. So if you're interested in that kind of content, go ahead and check that out as well. If you want to support me even further and gain cool perks, check out my Patreon. These lovely people have all given me their support over there and I couldn't be more grateful to them. I think I'm gonna wrap this up though. I'm Mystic Umbreon and I will see you in the future for more awesome Pokemon content.